Hello, wanted to share some thoughts about archetypes and kind of explain what they are and how they work. So, an archetype literally means a blueprint. And in the case of this conversation, archetype is a blueprint of consciousness. We all have identities, and in fact, all of our identities are archetypes. They personify a certain aspect of consciousness. Consciousness itself is unlimited. So, when you combine certain characteristics, behavioral patterns, ways of thinking, perceiving, abilities, intelligences. You put all that together, you create archetypes. So you're an archetype. Who you are, what you represent certain intelligence, certain emotions, certain feelings, certain behaviors, certain patterns, certain look to you, a certain everything. All those fine details, when you combine them all together, that creates your identity, and your identity is simply an archetype. It's a blueprint. There are divine archetypes. Now, divine archetypes represent these higher aspects or super aspects of human consciousness or consciousness in general. So, archetypes exist in a more material or more rational level in our unconscious mind. See, there's scientists and researchers, I think even at Stanford, MIT, and Harvard, who are now saying that our mental activity, our conscious mind, is only representing about 5% of what is actually going on. So 95% of the activities are unconscious. What's going on in that unconscious realm, and what's the potential there? See, our conscious mind is only representing a fraction of the full potential of human consciousness. At the most subtle level, there's collective consciousness. So collective consciousness exists at the most subtle level. That's where there's a unity, where you have the field of unlimited potential existing at the finest, the most subtle level. Our conscious state is just a narrow or more gross fraction of that unified consciousness. Our unified consciousness is where these divine archetypes live in. And they're represented in different traditions in different ways. So you have the gods and goddesses, these pantheons of different beings. And make no mistake, they are real, but they're also personifications of principles or blueprints of consciousness. So the way they look, the things that they hold, the kind of clothes they wear, the colors, the animals associated with them, their symbols, these are all a language that correspond. They're little packets of information that correspond to what they represent, that make up who they are and what they represent. And who are archetypes after all? Are they separate beings? No. They're part of you. So when you look at a pantheon like Hinduism, for example, or it's a bad word, the Vedic pantheon. Vedic religion is actually monotheistic, meaning they believe in one God. And all these different other gods or archetypes are just aspects of the one, the one. Even you are an aspect of God. Everyone is. Everything is. Now, the divine archetypes, how do you activate them? How do you acquire their intelligence? Or say you want to gain financial intelligence, right? Intelligence like Bill Gates or Richard Brunson, who has these ideas and who just naturally know how to make money. And financial intelligence is not just knowing how to make money, it's how to run a business, how to be able to take an idea and make something out of it. It's not just having ideas, it's how to use the ideas. Like someone like Nikola Tesla had the ideas, but he didn't have the financial intelligence. Therefore, he ended up, in very dire conditions towards the end of his life. Someone like Thomas Edison, though, you could consider he had financial intelligence. It's not good or bad. It's just the parts of consciousness that they've been able to bring into their conscious identity. So if you want a different kind of intelligence, you want a behavior, you want abilities, you can work with archetypes. What does that mean? It means you bring that part of you out into your conscious ability, your conscious awareness. So right now you're only seemingly having access to certain things, when in fact you just don't know how to access the other different things or the other parts of you that you want. And that's where archetypes come in. You know, so there's so many different ways to access them. One of the most profound ways is through sound. Sound itself is the foundational, fundamental aspect of consciousness. Sound. So in the process of creation, you have Akash or ether, you have wind, you have fire, water, earth. Akash is sound. This is where you have string theory, where the quantum physicists are saying at the foundation there's a field of sound where these strings are vibrating. And all the other different elements are really just different degrees of space, or different degenerations, you could even say. So sound is at the most subtle level. Then when it becomes a little more gross, and you get the air element. A little more gross, you get the fire element. A little more gross, and you get water. And at the grossest level, you have earth. So you can use sound to tap into the collective unconscious, or the unconscious, or the soul, or whatever you want to call it. So that's where mantras come in. You use a mantra for an archetype. And the sound itself is intelligence. That's Dr. Basker implies equation that he's brought in, or he's given to the world. Sound equals intelligence. Also using their symbols. See, the mind is plastique, as neuroplasticity. So when you focus on images, or even sound, what you hear, all the different sensory data that comes into you, it shapes your brain. When you're a child, your brain's in a very malleable state. So when you get older, your brain becomes more conditioned. And so you develop your identity. Basically, it means your identity solidifies. When you're a baby, you don't really have an identity. Your babies are just kind of like sponges, you know, and they're just taking in from their environment, and that's helping to shape their brain, including the genetics and all these things. But there's a huge influence from the environment, the sensory data that comes in. It shapes their brain, and the older we get, the more that solidifies. Now, but you can use that to your advantage by programming your brain, if you will, with the images and archetypes, focusing on their images, their symbols, visualizing their symbols, visualizing their images. This is a technology. This is we're calling it neuroplasticity nowadays, but the Vedic seers and the rishis and the siddhas, they've discovered and been using this stuff and teaching these things for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So it's nothing new. We're just now coming up with new ways to talk about it. It's all the same thing. So I think I'll stop it there, but in future videos I may go into different depths, but different areas of this, such as using images like what is called idolatry, or using statues, geometric diagrams. It's all the same, along the same thread of what we've just been discussing here. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. Leave me a comment below and let me know what you think. If you have any questions or you want to just share any feedback, please let me know. And God bless.